On today's episode of ForgivenNutritionist podcast, I'm talking with Hilda Gore. She's also known as Holistic Hilda. She's a certified health coach who's known as kind of a Dora the Explorer 2.0. She has traveled extensively with the objective of exploring traditional practices to improve the energy and vitality of humanity. Hilda is the host and producer of the Wise Traditions podcast, which has over 13 million downloads to date. Hilda shares the best of experts, experiences, and epic adventures in the podcast, her Holistic Hilda YouTube channel, and her in-person at conferences and retreats. Hilda has energy to spare because she keeps her feet on the ground and her face in the sun. Here's a clip from today's show.
In other words, we nourish ourselves well, and then the good stuff comes out. It's a kind of a universal principle if you stop and think about it. And especially when people are like, oh no, I'm concerned about crow's feet or yeah, maybe my reactivity. I'm always like bone broth. Bone broth, it is so healing. Literally from the inside out, you're going to start to glow because it's got the collagen, it's got the glycine, it's got all these good things in it, right? But the same goes with our spirits, right? We don't want to be negative and reacting to demands. We want to be proactive and loving and peaceful. And I'll tell you, because I've hung out with some influencers, not everything is as it seems on Instagram and the different platforms. And I've kind of had some surprises there but I know I'm not perfect either. So I'm not trying to cast judgment, but I'm just saying, I want that peace from within to glow. I want that light to shine from within. I don't want it to be some artificial thing that I put on. So again, avoiding what's fake and inviting in what's real means that inviting in what's beautiful and good and lovely and true and honorable and right.
Hey everyone, just a quick break to show some gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. If you are looking for a trustworthy place to choose all of your supplements, FullScript has 285 different brands to choose from. They did the work for you to check quality standards for all the supplements they carry. These standards are important because they help to ensure a product is safe, effective, and accurately labeled. FullScript uses third-party companies to provide unbiased assurance that certain quality criteria are met when they add a company or product to their inventory. When you set up an account with FullScript, use my link and you'll always get 15% off your supplements. Well, thank you so much for being on today, Hilda. I appreciate it.
Wendy, it's my pleasure.
Now, I'm a little familiar with you, and I know I just did the introduction for you, but why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and maybe even how you got to be known as Holistic Hilda?
Oh my gosh. I don't know where to start. I have so many stories to tell. I guess I'll just say that I used to be just a fitness instructor. I taught exercise classes several times a week with a Christian fitness ministry called Body and Soul Fitness. It's still around if people want to look it up. Coolest thing ever. You meet in churches, you're moving your body to music that's lifting up the Lord. Like, I loved it so much. And I thought that's all there was to well-being. I thought it doesn't matter what you eat, it doesn't matter anything else, just move it. So basically, as my friend says, it's kind of like I was a gym rat. Like, I was all about the movement. But then a dear friend of mine got sick with chronic fatigue, and doctors had no answers for her, Wendy, none. They couldn't help her at all. There's no known cause for it, no known solution, no cures. So she started playing around with diet. And so she came across Sally Fallon Morell, the woman who wrote Nourishing Traditions and started the Weston A. Price Foundation. And this very kind woman gently handed her book and said, you might want to read this. And I say it like this because my friend was nearly orange. She was eating so many carrots. Like, she was like, how can I get better? She was trying the macrobiotic diet. Like, no lie, her skin looked orange. Sally did not comment on the color of her skin. She just handed her book. And so then my friend in turn said to me, Hilda, diet matters. And I was like, how did I never think about this? Of course, that what God makes is beautiful and natural and healing, and that what we make tends to screw things up. So it made sense to me that the most natural, real foods are the best for us. And so I got involved with Weston Price Foundation, and that's a mouthful, but I can tell you more about it later. But the bottom line is, I was like, okay, I am into this. How can I help get the word out? And I helped start the podcast for the foundation. And a friend of mine in jest one time was just like, oh, you're Holistic Hilda. I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know what that meant. I wasn't that crunchy back then. And then I embraced the name, Wendy, and I'm like, yes, I love it. Number one, because it's memorable, but number two, because well-being is so multifaceted. It's not just one solution. Like, start doing these stretches and then you'll be great. Like there's fascial release and, proper ways to move primally. And like we can get into that later too. But it's just even about movement, there's so many approaches. So I feel like, yeah, health is multifaceted, and I want to help people kind of polish different sides of the diamond so they can experience optimal health.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I love about you is that one of the things that people don't really think too much about too is they try to overcomplicate a lot of things that you can just get back to some simple things, or they want a quick fix and they, there's something maybe you can do a little bit right now to help alleviate your pain or your knee pain or your joint pain or whatever. But for the long haul, it takes time to really kind of work with that inflammation that you really have. And a lot of people, like I said, they really try to overcomplicate things, or they think that they need a medication or a surgery when there's so many other things that you can do that sometimes don't even cost money,
Yes. Oh my gosh. It reminds me so much of that story in the Bible where I think it was Naaman. He had leprosy or something. And this little servant girl said to him, you should go down to the river and wash, let's say 3 times. I don't remember the exact prescription, but he looked at her with disdain. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, no. And he was very resistant until like someone said, if she had said like to do the most extreme thing and pour like all your money into it, this is Hilda's paraphrase, of course, but would you have done it? And he was like, absolutely. And they're like, okay, don't overlook this remedy for its simplicity. And so Wendy, as you probably know, I've had the privilege of traveling the world. I call myself Dora the Explorer 2.0. You see how I like my hats. Mm-hmm. But I'm all about exploring and uncovering ancient health traditions to help people restore their energy and vitality. And I keep coming back to basics. There are so many simple things we can do that create the right environment for our bodies to heal. And you're right, we're looking for some pill or prescription or program or physician, but I always say good health doesn't come in a bottle. It really is something that we can cultivate. Our bodies are like a garden where good health is to be cultivated. So we want to promote the right healing environment. And I have so many ideas for it, which I know we'll get into.
Well, and that's another thing that's perfectly said too, because until I got really in the space that I'm in, and really what started, I was just telling somebody the other day that started with my whole health journey as of the last, 6 years or so, is because I started taking some supplements. And before that, I mean, that was the most healthy thing I started doing, And so once I started doing just even that little thing, I noticed how, oh my gosh, my body was already responding differently. And that was without any diet or lifestyle changes. And
wow.
So that's when I really started digging into what, my body needed. And then it just kind of grew from there. But yeah, I never thought of my gut, for example, as something that's living, and it needs so many different organisms, good ones and bad ones. Mm-hmm. Everyone's so worried about getting rid of the bad ones, but no, the good ones eat the bad ones. And so, you have to have this whole diverse system. It's like you said, like it's a wildflower garden. You need everything in there. It's a whole ecosystem out there. Nobody thinks about little things like that.
Absolutely. They're always looking for something quick and easy, and it's a little bit more complex than that. We're beautifully and wonderfully made, right? We're beautifully designed. So it's like, so there are simple things that you can incorporate. I'm all about these simple little habits. I don't know if you know this, Wendy, but my first career was as a translator. So I would take concepts in Spanish and French and put them into a target language, English, to make them accessible to people. And so I feel like I'm kind of still doing that now. Like you, I'm a podcaster and I've interviewed, hundreds of people. And so I take these kind of heady concepts and try to bring them down to earth in a way that we can access them and apply them.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely hoping you're going to do that today, because I know that not a lot of my listeners maybe are familiar with you, and the ones I personally know definitely weren't familiar with you. So I'm very excited to have you kind of drive home some of these simple things. And I always like to say, and I'm sure you say this as well, that some of the simple things are not always easy, because a lot of times we're kind of working through our own habits that we're trying to overcome. And those are the hardest things to kind of work through and get over, I think.
Yeah, I read Atomic Habits and I was like, okay, yeah, it takes time to incorporate new ones and to drop those that aren't serving us as well. But we shouldn't give up. I love how, as they say, how good you feel is like such a reward in and of itself. And then you have the energy to like carry your kids or hang out with your grandkids. What I really want for people, Wendy, is for health to be a second thought. I don't want them to spend all their money and all their time chasing health. I want people to feel like, oh man, yeah, I'm in the place I want to be, so I can do whatever I want. Like, you have these limitless possibilities in front of you. That's my desire for people.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's one of the things that I love about you, because you do have a great platform, even on Instagram and social media. So I think there are good things about social media out there. Sometimes you just have to pick the right ones. So what kind of daily habits or rituals do you kind of start your day off with? Maybe that'll help some people get some good ideas.
Such a good question. I think how we start the day sets the tone for the day. So, okay, I'm going to tell you a little secret. As an exercise instructor, with my kids being like 4 kids under 5 years of age, like I was always on the go, and my time teaching classes was my time. So I really honored it and I loved it. And we did have a babysitter who could help with the kids. So I was like, okay, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, I'm in just 1 hour. Just give me 1 hour. You know how some moms just want to go in the bathroom for a second and not have anybody knocking on it. So I can totally relate. So what I would do, I can't believe I'm confessing this, but it's true. I would put on my exercise clothes the night before and sleep in it so I could spring out of bed and be ready to go. And I sometimes did this with my kids. I don't know if this is a good tip or not, but I have better stuff coming. But let me just say, if you want to save time, I was like, okay, I just bathed them. Can't I put on their clothes for the morning tonight? And so it was a little bit of the mentality of the guy who was featured in the book, Cheaper by the Dozen. I think he was a scientist and he was always looking for the most efficient way to do things. So I guess I was too. And moms, you get creative, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm in a different place. Actually, my kids are grown and I'm thankful, but I just will say this. It doesn't matter if they're grown or still, hugging your knees right now. There are simple things you can do, and there are simple things, I'll just share 2 that I do that help set the tone for the day. So I'm not just running. You get that racing feeling. Notice how even my voice sped up as I was telling you how quickly I was trying to spring out of bed. Like, you run out of breath in that moment, and it really, that didn't really set the tone for my day of like breathing and gratitude. So what I do now is I do sunrise before screen rise. And I think I got this idea because I talked to Jack Cruz, Thaddeus Owen, Dewey Lehman, different folks in this health and wellness space who said, really, the sunlight is a help to our metabolism, to our energy, to our mood. And I was a night owl, so I was like, sunrise light? I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't want to see any number on the clock that's before an 8. Like, I was just like a sleep-in girl. If I could, I would. But then I thought, okay, they're saying to me, and this is what I've learned, that the early morning sunlight is a special combination of light. It has no UVA or UVB in the spectrum, but it has just the right amount of light to kind of set our internal clock, our body clock. So yeah, I was sluggish in the morning because I was staying up late at night. I had all kinds of artificial light around me. So I didn't understand what it meant to even get outside before I would get on my screens or get busy with my day or what have you. So now I get outside within 30 to 45 minutes of sunrise. And if you're thinking, no, just hear me out for a second. Like, what surprised me the most is within 2 weeks, my circadian rhythm shifted and I was able to get out of bed without even an alarm. So my husband literally was scoffing at me, laughing, not behind my back, in front of it, being like, oh, we'll see how long this lasts, Hilda. What the sunrise thing. I haven't looked back. And that was like 7 years ago or more. Like, I started getting that sunrise light. So it started informing the cells in my body. It helps, like I said, with metabolism. So I know some people that have lost weight just by getting the morning sun. It's crazy. Get the morning sun, just be out there for 10, 15 minutes, walk your dog or get your kids, even if they're right around your knees. Like I said, just say, hey, we're all going outside. We're having breakfast as a picnic this morning. Whatever you need to do, get creative, but get outside. And then it sets the tone for your day. Instead of answering emails or kind of doom scrolling and getting distracted by the worst news ever, you never know what social media is going to throw at you. You're starting the day on your own terms. So that's one thing I do every morning. And I also offer gratitude. So I came to faith in my teen years. And so even if I hadn't, what I've come to realize is that gratitude lifts the spirit. And what good is all the best food in the world and all the best movement in the world and all these things if you don't have anything to lift your spirit and you're depressed and anxious and unhappy? So I started, keeping a gratitude journal. I think I read the book 1,000 Gifts by Ann Voskamp, and that really inspired me. I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I can get to 1,000. And she's like, don't just speak in generalities in your gratitude journal, like, I'm thankful for friends or food or family. Those are all great. But, the whole journal could be filled with that. She's like, be thankful for the bubbles when you wash dishes that show up on the soap and the sponge, and be thankful for even if there's a broken bit of glass, the way the light shines off of that. Like, she was just blowing my mind with gratitude. And so what scientists now know is what some of us have experienced personally, is that gratitude rewires the brain. So the more I'm thankful, Wendy, even for the difficult things, the more I see things to be thankful for. And I even write down things that are hard, and I'll even put like a question mark by it, or like a straight face, like not a smiley face, like, okay, I think I'm thankful for this, because there's something in the midst of that gratitude that keeps me open for more goodness and helps me see the goodness even in the darkest of times. So I think the sunlight and then that morning gratitude practice are very helpful for me.
Yeah, the other day you had an Instagram post about the morning sun and all about the nitrous oxide that dumps in your body. And it's so good for one of the easiest things someone can do if they have high blood pressure is get the morning sun, because again, they need that nitric oxide, and again, that's free. It costs you nothing but your time and your energy to walk outside.
I know. And it's so funny because I was a health coach. I was a fitness professional. I was going from, like, let's say my house to the church, to pick up the kids from school, to home, to groceries, to pick whatever, all the things. And if I spent 15 minutes outside, that was the max. And I was not paying attention to the light at all. But now I know from, again, experts that I've talked to, but also places I've been around the world, how important the sun is. I was in Ecuador in 2021, and I went down there around the time of the Inti Raymi festival, which if you look it up on Google or Wikipedia, it says like it's a sun worship festival. Well, it wasn't exactly a sun worship festival, but it was this. It was gratitude, as I just mentioned. It was gratitude, almost like a Thanksgiving kind of gratitude for the harvest they'd gotten from the earth. But they love the sun. They're grateful for its perfect positioning in relation to the earth, right? If we were any closer to it, we would all like blow up in a puff of smoke and fire. And if it were too far, we'd be too cold to sustain life here on this planet. But instead, we're just perfectly located to get the right amount of sun that feeds our mitochondria. And this is what I was going to say, is some scientists say 1/3 of our mitochondrial energy comes from food and 2/3 comes from the sun. So one person I interviewed said, we are light eaters. Think about it. The produce that you eat has gotten light from the sun. The animals that you eat, if you eat meat, have gotten light from the sun. And so then we're getting the light information from them at the same time. Like, it's a deep rabbit hole, but I just want to say the sun matters much more than I ever realized.
Yeah, it's again going back to that whole ecosystem. Everything feeds in one way or another off of each other, even if it's just the sun. Yeah, it definitely is a part of that whole system. Yeah. And when you talk about gratitude, years ago, when I used to suffer from depression and anxiety, that's of course one of the things that they work with you sometimes in talk therapy. And I remember doing that, and it does definitely rewire your brain. Even if you don't feel it. And what I found, and I still do this to this day, and my husband kind of laughs at me because I'm the type of person where I don't love going to the gym, but I love the fact that I'm working out my body because it's helping my body and my brain. And it's going to help me now when I'm like 90 and 105. What I do now is going to only help me. And so that's the whole reason. So sometimes before I go to the gym, I will literally say, so my brain can hear me say, I'm so excited to go to the gym today. And again, it's that straight face. It's not the smiley face. But I purposely say that out loud so my brain can hear me say, and because I'm grateful that I get to move my body. I'm grateful that I can lift the gallon of milk. I'm grateful that I can lift that 5 pounds or 10 pounds or 30 pounds, depending what I'm doing. I'm grateful that I get to practice balancing or ride on the bike. I'm grateful that I get to do all of those things. So
yes, 100%. And I was with a friend the other day. I guess, he's a little bit older than me. I haven't done my big age reveal, but let's just say he's in his 60s or 70s, and he literally had a walker. He's been struggling with internal bleeding and all kinds of stuff, too low of blood pressure, actually. So he faints. That's why he has the walker to hold him up in case. But he said, I wish I could tell young people that what you choose to do today catches up with you. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a good word. Like, we don't realize those little habits. And you've framed it this way, Wendy, which I'm grateful for. Every little habit either moves us closer to the life that we want to live and that optimal health, or further from it. So good for you for stating what you want to feel, even if you don't feel it, because that is moving you in the right direction.
Yeah. Like I said, my husband kind of chuckles at me and I do it for myself, even when I'm by myself, because again, I want my brain to hear it. I don't want my brain to hear me have negative talk. I'd rather my brain hear me have positive talk or have more positive talk in my life. So, because like you said, we're inundated with social media just naturally, or commercials on TV. I mean, even if you just watch half an hour of television a day, you can still see so much negativity. So yeah, I definitely.
Oh my gosh, so much. And so this is one reason I actually like to say that our diet isn't just the food we consume, it's everything we consume. So watch what you're watching and see how it affects your mood. And it's too easy to be pulled down. So yeah, I have a timer on my social media account, so I'm not on too long. So at least I'm aware of what it's doing to me. I don't want it to extricate me from the present moment.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to get sucked in, and people don't really realize, or maybe they've heard it, but it's literally designed to keep us coming back for more and staying on there and scrolling for more and more and more.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate,
Oh, it's so unfortunate. So one little hack for that, one little trick to kind of tame the beast, if you will, is you can set your phone to a black and white mode, which a daughter of mine has done, because it's much less enticing. I mean, think about if you walk into a casino, there's all these bright lights and different colors. That's by design to pull you in so you'll lose all your money and the house wins, And in this case, what's valuable is your time. And so if you don't want to get sucked in by the phone, change it to a gray and white mode. Or I have a hack. This is just so the bright light doesn't disrupt my circadian rhythm, which I've worked so carefully to cultivate. So at night, with a triple click on the side of my phone, my screen turns red. So it makes it less invasive or disruptive to my pineal gland and to my eyes. And it kind of lets me know it's near bedtime. So that helps.
Yeah, I have a feature too where I turned on after 7 p.m. Mine automatically turns to that different shade. And I'm not usually too much on social media. Well, definitely not social media or on my phone unless somebody texts me or calls me. But I still try not to go on too much after that time anyways. Same. But, you can't help it sometimes. But yeah, it automatically turns at 7 o'clock. It automatically turns a different color. It's darker, it's dimmer, it's more orangey. And so, yeah, all that blue light is then gone from it.
Exactly.
So we touched on nutrition a little bit already, which I was definitely glad that you mentioned. It's more than just the actual food on your plate, because that's one of the things that, and I think you went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition as well. Yeah, that's one of the things that really drew me to them too, because it's not just about the food on your plate. It is literally about your environment. The people that are in your lives, your relationships, those can all play an impact on your whole overall health, physical and mental health. And people just don't realize that. So I was definitely glad that you mentioned that. So tell me a little bit more about how you think it really, or what have you seen for how it impacts people in their overall health?
Well, when I was in Ecuador at that festival, that Inti Raymi festival, Quechua woman said to me, during COVID, a lot of our community got sick. And she said, what we did was some women and I gathered up 20 medicinal herbs and plants, and we took them to each household that had been affected by COVID. And she said, no one was hospitalized and no one died. And I was like, oh my gosh. So this is 2021 when it was still pretty fresh, So I was thinking, number one, please show me the list of medicinal plants and herbs because I'm very curious. I never got a hold of that list. But then I realized, Wendy, oh my gosh, it wasn't just those plants. It was the context in which they were given. The love and support of community members means everything. And I think we kind of know it in our society because I think one reason we're so attached to our devices is because it feels like a constant companion. It's become like our blankie or comfort device. But I think in these communities that I visited in Ecuador, in Ethiopia, in Australia, in Peru, there are still people living in community. And we are starving for that. And it is really important for our well-being. Touch, proximity, a listening ear. You were talking about therapy earlier. Like, I think the reason we go to that, and no shade on it, but it's because who's close by that we can talk to and just share our heart and maybe in exchange listen to theirs. Like, these things are critical. And in some tribal customs, they would isolate a tribe member who has done something wrong as a punishment. And sometimes those tribal members would die, not because they were starving, but because of the isolation itself. So I think we really underestimate the value of connection. What I'm happy about, what's happening now, I will say one bright thing about technology is, people rally around podcasts and personalities and influencers on social media. And so we're creating community intentionally. And though we are far apart, we can still offer words of encouragement and support and sometimes get together in person. But we have to be intentional about it because in our 21st century, modern, developed country world, there's just a lot of running past each other and very little true connection. And I think that's what we really long for.
Yeah. On Facebook, I'm a member of a couple different groups, and people are very encouraging, very uplifting when another person needs it. And they're not even the first couple of groups that I'm thinking of, they're not even, because I'm very involved in my church and, I'm a believer as well, but they're not even, it's more just about, like, one of them is a coaching group. So they're all just very encouraging to each other about, if they're going to take a test or next steps that they're going to do or any ideas that they have for, how they can help with clients or reach other clients. And so everyone's just very encouraging, and it's almost like if they were part of some kind of Christian community group or something like that, but it is very positive and uplifting. So, but again, to your point, like you said, you have to be very intentional with, and I'm very selective with groups that I do join, and how long I stay on them. But yeah, you have to be very intentional and watch and keep your focus, because it can be very easy to be sucked into other things as well, or picking inappropriate groups.
And the other thing I'm thinking about, one thing that's special about connection, and, I've had the privilege of traveling with Mary Ruddick, who's an ancestral nutritionist, and the way she puts it in some of the communities she's seen, but also some that I've seen, the people are all over each other, and now we live in these big houses where even each kid has their own bedroom. And so we're missing that physical connection. So if anyone listening lives alone and is like, oh my gosh, yes, I have community, I have some online groups and that's great, but I long for more touch. Well, maybe join a boxing class. Maybe boxing wouldn't be the right kind of touch, but some kind of group where you get touched, or you can do this cool thing I've heard about, and I haven't even interviewed anyone on this subject, Wendy, but I don't know if you've heard of havening. It's emotional freedom tapping, where people do these special tapping on these certain points in the body, and it kind of calms the nervous system. But it's more like maybe what a mom would do if you were sad. She would wipe your brow, or she would kind of rub the back of your arm. And you can do these things for yourself. It's so fascinating that the body will respond to the touch, even your own. But girl, yes, we need this more than ever, I think, in our digital, busy, busy world.
Yeah. At the Amen clinics, we have quite a few, especially on the East Coast, doctors and practitioners that do havening.
Oh.
And it's quite wonderful. I've only just learned about it, so it's very interesting. And I learned about it because a lot of the practitioners used to do EMDR, which is the eye movement, rapid desensitization. I can't say that word. Desensitizes. And it's mainly for trauma, people that have been in trauma that
Yes.
it really helps with, which is wonderful. But it does help with a lot of different things. And when you were talking about touch, that's one of the things that I think, and I know that a lot of people talk about this with the blue zones, is that people are in close-knit communities and they are closer and they do a lot of hugging and kissing and, it's just general touching, they kiss on each cheek and they take siestas together or naps together, and then they wake up and they go back out and they work in the fields. And so I think that's definitely a testament to all the people that are living over 100, because they live in those small communities and they're all active well over 100.
Yes, and I've seen them with my own eyes. In Kenya, I met a Maasai elder who was over 100, and he walked to where I was with just a simple walking stick. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's where I got the idea for the podcast, actually. I grabbed my phone. I thought, I have to interview this man. We hadn't even started a show for the foundation yet. And I just clicked on voice memo, and I was like, I need to hear this man's stories. But without getting too far afield, like he was living in the context of his Maasai culture and village. And I will tell you one quick story that I said, what did you do as a child when you got sick? And he said, we never got sick.
Oh, wow.
Literally said, we never got sick. He said, if we ever felt like a shiver coming on, we would just drink milk from the cow. And he demonstrated drinking it from the udder. I was like, oh my goodness. And that man is still alive to this day. I'm in touch with some people in his village, and he's still alive. He's going strong. So he was doing something right.
Well, growing up, that was always a dream of mine. Like, I always wanted to be a National Geographic photographer, and I always wanted to go to Africa. So that would have been like my dream when I was a kid.
Wow.
I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau and
Yes.
Nova and things like that. So yeah, I would have loved to have met that man.
Well, it's not too late, so I can connect you guys.
Since you were talking about him drinking the milk, tell me what kind of specific dietary recommendations do you think that people should have or stay away from, or what kind of things when it comes to diet, what do you recommend?
Oh, thank you for asking. I have recently kind of synthesized all this information from hundreds of people I've interviewed, from dozens of places I've gone to, and it boils down to this. This is like my dietary recommendation is say no to what's fake and say yes to what's real. No to what's fake and yes to what's real. What could be more simple? Nothing. That's like the simplest way of expressing it. And what I mean is this. The real foods, the single ingredient foods that your grandmother or great grandmother would recognize as food. I'm talking about eggs and seafood and meat and butter. The simplest foods are the most nourishing, almost in every single case. I can't think of any exceptions. If you do, let me know. And then they are the foods that are God-given and are single ingredient foods. They're not coming in any package or ultra processed or with a cute little label that says heart healthy or even paleo or gluten free, because the stuff that's in packages has gone through a lot of processing. And that processing often minimizes the nutrients and has additives that our body has to then cope with and sometimes cannot. So this is what leads to sometimes leaky gut, is that there are extra ingredients in foods that we buy at the supermarket that poke holes in the gut and then make it so that proteins and other things come through, and then suddenly we're sensitive to gluten or peanuts or lactose or what have you. So I suggest, saying no to what's fake. And when I say fake, I mean ultra processed, packaged and canned, and saying yes to what's real, more single ingredient foods. And this does mean more cooking because the foods do need that kind of processing at home a lot of times, right? So a little bit more cooking, but simplicity is gourmet. Like my friend Hillary Boynton says, I mean, literally for dinner, I will have a pork chop with a little salad on the side and maybe some sauerkraut. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy. Don't feel like you got to get in there and make your own sourdough, though I have great friends who do, and it's beautiful, but I spend my time otherwise doing other things. When people ask me, what do you make? I say, well, mostly I make the podcast, but I'm just trying to get at, move toward more things that you could buy from a farmer or at a farmer's market. Keep it simple and avoid the things that have the right labels but aren't doing any favors. And here's just one example of how that happens, Wendy. You know, I'm sure. But so when they put preservatives in a food, they want it to have a long shelf life. But the challenge there is the preservatives are trying to keep the food holding together and looking nice so that it stays there a long time so more people will buy it. When you ingest that food, let's just say it's a cereal or something, the preservatives are still trying to hold the food together, so they fight digestion and absorption of any nutrients contained therein. Whereas if you eat food that will go bad, like let's say some meat or even some sourdough bread that someone made for you or whatever, that means it's going to more easily break down in the body and you can get the best and the most out of it. The way I say it often is if it has a long shelf life, it likely will shorten yours. So you want to avoid the stuff on the shelves as much as you can and go toward the whole real food that will really give you the optimal health that you're seeking. And I do have a friend, a side note, I do have a friend who said to me, oh, well, Hilda, I've got a bunch of kids here. I think he has 3 or 4. I forget, we were having dinner with them at their house. And he was telling me, like, why should we go organic? And I know organic is expensive, which is segue. It's kind of ironic because they're putting fewer things on it. And so why is it more expensive? I don't know. But it's harder for the farmer than it is for some big crop duster to spray all the pesticides and glyphosate and stuff on the crop. So anyway, he was saying, why should I go organic? I've got a big family and I kind of don't want to be that person. He goes, my wife, when we first got married, said she wanted to go organic, but I told her that's not the kind of father I want to be. Literally, he said stuff like this. Oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. But anyway, I haven't said his name. Please, if you're listening, my friend, don't take it personally. But you made me think. He made me think. And I did say to him, you can either pay your farmer or pay your doctor. In the U.S., we spend less on food. Our food bill is lower, but our healthcare costs are higher. And in Europe, for example, they spend more on their food, but less on healthcare. And I said, when you buy organic or the better foods or the, regenerative meats or what have you that are going to have less hormones and antibiotics in the meat, and so that means less of that coming into you, it's an investment in your kids' health. I don't know if you heard me, but it helped me realize, oh, this is why I'm about this work, because I want to educate people. And then they have to make their own decisions at the end of the day. But I will say this, you don't have to go organic to choose meat over chips, or potatoes over chips. So if you buy potatoes, it's cheaper than if you buy a bag of potato chips, which by the way is like full of mostly air. And I mean, I like a good chip as much as the next person, but the problem is some of these are full of seed oils. And again, they're overly processed. So buy the potatoes, cut them up, make some homemade chips in some lard or bacon fat or whatever. And you're going to be like, wait, this is amazing and so much better. It does take time, but I think good health is worth the investment. Once again, I come back to that. Where are you investing? And know that it will make a difference for your health. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. In one of my earliest podcast episodes, because I only just started last year, but in one of my podcast episodes when I was talking about longevity, I kind of equated how nobody thinks about, some people are good at thinking about their future when it comes to like their 401k or investment banking, because they're planning for that future. Even if they start in their 40s, they're still now finally starting to plan for when they're going to retire. But nobody ever thinks about their health when they're going to retire, and so it's to your point, like you said, you got to figure, do you want to invest in your health now, or do you want to invest in your illness later? I think there's a little meme about that out there too.
Well, and guess what, Wendy? When you go to the gym, you're investing in your health. As a friend of mine says, you're like making deposits in your health bank, Mm-hmm. So we want to make more of those and fewer of the other ones. That's not to say, I don't eat stuff that I don't know where it came from. Sometimes, I travel a lot, so I just got to bless it and hope for the best, but so I'm not perfect. And I'm also not trying to be perfect because I don't want to obsess about it, but I make the best choices, trying to make as many deposits in my health bank account as possible. And it's paying off, and so I really, really want to encourage people, even if it's just one small change, like don't wait for tomorrow, like make it today. It's an investment.
Yeah, because tomorrow never comes, because there's always another tomorrow. So
Good
yeah,
point.
you got to start today. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What kind of natural remedies do you have for health issues? Because I think that, like, I have a one good friend who, again, when she had a headache, she just wanted to kept taking Tylenol, or, we have a sore back or something, and they just want to immediately run and pop some kind of over-the-counter medication. Do you have any kind of natural remedies that you like to recommend to people?
Yes. Well, I would say this. When you pop a pill, your symptoms will subside often. But the challenge is, it's like you're telling your body, shh, don't talk to me anymore. Don't tell me something's wrong. I want to kind of cover this up right now. It's like, if you're at a show and your baby's crying, you pop the pacifier in. Okay, that makes sense. But the baby's crying for a reason. Your body is trying to tell you something for a reason. That headache will probably come back. That back soreness will come back. It's your body saying something's not quite right. And they say if you keep telling it to be quiet, eventually it will start screaming. So to avoid that, my best remedies are actually incorporating some of these habits. When I think about friends with headaches, I'm like, okay, what in your environment needs to change? Are you working too close to a router? Like, that's something that's not good for us. I understand that the non-native frequencies emitted by the router, they give us the connectivity, which again, I'm thankful for, but they also have a tendency to, cause headaches, alter our blood composition, kind of cause it to clump up, leading to higher blood pressure. It can lead to inflammation and all sorts of issues. So, not to mention oxidative stress, which can lead to cancer. So what we do in our household, and this is another simple hack, is we turn off the Wi-Fi at night. I sell on my site just little kill switches. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. And my husband and I used to fight, honestly, because he would like to stay up later. I'm not really fight terribly hard, but I'd be like, right, don't forget to turn off the Wi-Fi. But now, he's like, oh, it's so simple. When I turn off the remote, I hit the little button and it goes off. No one's getting emails or needing to get online when they're sleeping. And when we're sleeping, it's this wonderful opportunity for the body to detox, Wendy. So people think, oh, I need to do a green smoothie or a colon cleanse, or like, again, we love the big extremes. What if we came back to something as simple as not electrifying ourselves while we're sleeping? Let the body rest. Let your bedroom be the sanctuary it was designed to be. Devices far from you, charging in the other room. No little lights to disrupt your circadian rhythm. And so I always come back to the basics. And so I started this course. I've only run it once. I think I'm going to run it again this fall, and maybe just, once or twice a year, put it out there. But it's based on 6 ancestral secrets. And these are like the top 6 things that I've learned from my travels and from the interviews I've made on the podcast. And it's as simple as getting your feet on the ground. And getting this, I say, keep your feet on the ground and keep your face to the sun, because it's a simple gift, right? The earth is right beneath our feet. When was the last time people went barefoot? So what happens is, just to go back to the person with the headache or the, let's say, inflammation, we're carrying this heavy burden of stress on our bodies. Even the artificial light around us right now is kind of stressing us on some level. We don't see it, but sometimes there's a constant flicker, and our brain does register it, and then it might turn into the headache, or when you've been on the computer too long, right? Who hasn't experienced this? So what you can do is as simple as getting outside and putting your bare feet on the ground. And what happens is the earth takes from you this positive charge that's kind of accumulated from all of the toxins you're exposed to, not just the EMFs, but others. It takes that burden from you and replaces it with a negative charge, which can help prevent cancer. It lowers the inflammation. It boosts your mood, all these things. Again, a 10-minute, 15-minute break. People used to take smoke breaks. I don't know if they still do, but you could take a sun break or a soil break, and people look at you like you're crazy. Like, I've gotten out in a park in my neighborhood and they're like, dogs pee there. Why are you barefoot? But I'm like, I'm doing this anyway, because I think the benefit outweighs the risk. So I would say, get your feet on the ground and get your face in the sun and see if it doesn't help your body kind of realign with nature's rhythms. I'm not saying that's going to solve everything, but if you try either of those for 2 weeks, I bet you'll start to see some changes and experience in them in your body. And the reason I love this is because it doesn't matter what the data shows or the latest study. Sometimes we get into something because someone recommended it online, but you are N equals 1. You are the control group. You are the study group. Test it out for yourself and see how it works for you.
Yeah. And you're definitely not going to be worse off.
No, you're not. You're probably going to feel better. Oh my gosh. I almost, Yeah, I almost was this close to posting something online today, and thank God I didn't. But, we have this reactive mode that we get in, which also is when the cortisol kicks in. So we feel stressed. Somebody sends us an email, and we're like, or one kid, tugs on us one time too many, and we're like, you just feel like growling or snapping at someone. That's very natural. Don't should on yourself, mamas. I'm always like, people are always like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I should have done this or that. In the heat of the moment, rather than just reacting, get proactive and be like, okay, we're going outside. It's time for a break, or tell yourself that. Or like you say, I'm excited. I'm going to the gym right now. And give yourself the space and time to get in a different environment and feel the shift of that energy. I was like, oh, I don't have to say that. Because as you were saying earlier, something about social media and how it's also negative, I want to say, like, if anybody ends up following me on Holistic Hilda on Instagram, you're not going to get a lot of, this company is doing this to us and the FDA, I hate it for that, because I'm like, I don't want to put my energy that way. I'd rather be for things instead of against. And so I think gratitude has helped shape that. My faith has helped shape that. And time in the sun and on the soil shapes that. So I'm like a very different person than I was years ago. Not that I was negative Nancy or anything, but I just feel like I have learned to put my energy where I want it most. And that's in affecting my own health, that of my household, my immediate community. Like, you can't really make big changes for other people, but I can change how I respond. I can change how I act, as best I can. I know it's not always easy sometimes there either, but in other words, take care of my own backyard before I start trying to start a neighborhood cleanup campaign. So that's how I like to focus my energy and encourage people to do the same.
Yeah, well, you definitely are absolutely a delight to to watch on Instagram. And, one of the things that I tell my clients even is that, again, because unfortunately we live in the Amazon world, we want to see things right here and now. I'm guilty of this as well. I'm not immune to it. But sometimes, like you said, when you put your feet on the ground or you get your face in the sun, you can't literally always see the changes that's actually going on under the surface. And I was just talking with someone recently on another podcast about it's kind of like that undercurrent or that undertow under the water. The surface looks great. And maybe that's, how you maybe appear on the outside, but there can either be a nice calm water underneath, or there can be this undertow that's going to sweep you down and be negative. And so I want my undertow and, the undercurrent to be nice and calm and happy and good. And so even though I physically can't see something on the surface, I want the earth and the sun and whatever I'm incorporating, rubbing my lymphatics, to be something that I don't necessarily have to see, but I know that it's doing something for my good, even if it's just as simple as that.
Yeah. I sometimes say that, beauty comes from within. In other words, we nourish ourselves well, and then the good stuff comes out. It's a kind of a universal principle if you stop and think about it. And especially when people are like, oh no, I'm concerned about crow's feet, or yeah, maybe my reactivity. I'm always like, bone broth. Bone broth, it is so healing. Literally from the inside out, you're going to start to glow because it's got the collagen, it's got the glycine, it's got all these good things in it, right? But the same goes with our spirits, right? We don't want to be negative and responding, reacting to demands. We want to be proactive and loving and peaceful. And I'll tell you, because I've hung out with some influencers, not everything is as it seems on Instagram and the different platforms. And I've kind of had some surprises there but I know I'm not perfect either. So I'm not trying to cast judgment, but I'm just saying, I want that peace from within to glow. I want that light to shine from within. I don't want it to be some artificial thing that I put on. So again, avoiding what's fake and inviting in what's real means that inviting in what's beautiful and good and lovely and true and honorable and right, and watching how that causes transformation and beauty and health from the inside out.
Well, and one of the things that I love watching your Instagram for is when your dad is on. I love your dad. He's so stinking adorable, especially when he does like his pull-ups on the bar in his house and stuff. So my next question was going to be about what types of physical activity do you recommend for holistic health? And so I thought, who better for me to ask you about that with when we talk about your dad, because like he's in his 90s and he's still doing these things. He's does not clearly live a sedentary lifestyle, which I think is fantastic.
He is so amazing. He is my hero. I can hardly believe he's 92. He can do not only pull-ups, but kind of like these little flips using the abdominal muscles. I'm like, Dad, you're amazing. He plays pickleball. And so this is some of his secrets is he walks. He's not afraid of walking. I have walked around, Miami, and we've spent time in Florida together. He does live nearby, but we've done these trips together, and he's not afraid of walking. He also will not spend a lot of time sitting, Wendy, honestly. Like, we go to see shows and he will literally stand in the back. He's an example to me. And I have come to find out that having our legs at that 90-degree position is not natural. It actually causes to be, what do they call it? Like imbalances and tightness in the hamstrings and in the hip flexors. And then it leads to back pain and other things down the line. But that's one of those things that you won't notice maybe in your 20s or 30s. But later it'll be like, ow, ooh, it hurts when I drive. I know people who say, oh, I won't do long drives. It hurts my back. And I'm like, what? So what do? I follow my dad's example. I walk. I stand a lot, actually, too. I also do resistance training. Honestly, what I mean is I just do free weight work every single day. I mean, maybe I'll take Sundays off because I think recovery is important as well. But it doesn't have to be long. It's just enough to let my muscles remember what needs to happen, because if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And I know that's a trite phrase, but I experienced that as a translator. So I took Spanish and French and would put them into English, like I said earlier. But I only have kept up my Spanish because I'm a native Spanish speaker, basically. My dad is from Cuba, my mom from Mexico, so we spoke Spanish in my household. French I learned along the way. But because my French, I haven't been practicing it, it's gotten really rusty. I mean, I can say some things, assez, more or less good, but the same goes for the body. It is no joke. If you want to be able to walk with just a little walking stick when you're 100, like my Maasai elder friend, then you need to be walking today. So walking is the simplest exercise. I go 30, 45 minutes a day. I do have a dog, so that helps me get out, but do whatever you can to walk. And my birthday's coming up. I asked actually for a rucksack or weighted vest because I know that's good for bone density too. So I'm just trying to do my best to maintain this vessel, so that it will serve me and health can be a second thought.
That's great. Well, and I love walking as well. But again, we have two larger dogs. For a long time, I just lived in apartments, so I had small dogs. So I had Chihuahuas, so there wasn't a whole lot of walking that was involved. But now we have large dogs, and they definitely, even though we have an acre and a half of property, they require some walking. So we're definitely involved with walking, and it's again one simple thing. It gets you out of the house, which again I'm grateful that I have to get out with them, because otherwise I probably would be sitting at home. Even if I'm working on a podcast or something, but I'd still be sitting in the house doing something. So I'm grateful that I get those times out with them, and it benefits me and them. So
yeah, I love that. I call that like stacking my hacks. So I've been known to do that now and then. It especially happens in the winter when I do my shiver walks, because I think the cold is one of those ancient secrets that's good for the health. So I'll be like wearing a tank top and shorts. It'll be pretty cold out, like let's say 40 degrees or maybe 35 or whatever. So, and then I'll do movement outside and I'm getting the sun. It's like all the things at once. I'm like, this is amazing. So as best you can. Yeah. Multitask a little bit like that. That's great.
We talked a little bit about community earlier. Can you share some ways that you like to have people foster community to support their well-being, especially if it includes exercise? I know you said your dad plays pickleball, but maybe it doesn't have to include exercise.
Well, actually, I mentioned at the top that body and soul fitness class, like going to a class, because it's a habit, those people become your friends, whether you're teaching or whether you're attending. So you can find affinity groups anywhere now through Meetup or what have you. Of course, I try to do in-person health conferences. So if anybody's listening, they're like, oh, I love all this health stuff. I'd love to learn more. You already said at the top and maybe at the end, places where people can find me or the Weston A. Price Foundation. It's so fun because you find, oh my gosh, I have so much in common with this Amish farmer and I'm a city girl. I'm like, what's happening? But it's really encouraging on a really profound level to even know, we don't have to think exactly the same to have some overlap and some common ground. And it's also encouraging because, like you said, this world can be so negative, and the news, I just feel like, oh my gosh, like my mother-in-law right now, she's 98 years old, so she can't do a lot. So she watches a lot of TV, and my husband says it's driving him crazy because he's caring for her in just a very sweet way as a dutiful son. He's so wonderful with her. But the point I'm trying to make is she takes in so much bad stuff. I like try to get over there with my guitar and play some music to kind of liven things up. But yeah, like find an affinity group near you, whether it's surrounding health or fitness or a hobby of photography. Like they're all over the place, but don't isolate yourself. And that's one of the sad things. I did mention it earlier, but I know when I travel that people know I'm not from that country when I'm eating a meal alone. And I try not to eat a meal alone, but inevitably if I land and I haven't yet connected with people, like I'll do it. And I stand out as an American because it's really more of an American thing to eat alone. I don't think we were meant to eat alone. So invite a neighbor over, make your own affinity group. In my city where I live right now, that one neighbor is trying to do an alley party this summer, and it's a small thing, but it's still a thing, so don't let the big overwhelm you from just doing, as they say, small things. Small things with great love are significant and important for our health.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned reaching out and the Weston A. Price Foundation, I did recently reach out to Jamie Kernan, who's my Weston A. Price. She's my chapter here. And I guess you guys just did the School of Lunch together last month in July. So that's cool. So I've reached out to her. As far as I know, they don't have anything going on right now, but I kind of recently found out that on your website, there is a spot where you can find your local chapter and get involved and find out more. So I'll put that link in the show notes as well for people to kind of look and find a new way to get connected.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're right. All they have to do is go to westonaprice.org and click on Find Food or Local Chapter. And all over the world, you could be like in, Quito or something and click on that and see if there's a chapter leader down there and find food near you and an affinity group for sure.
Well, and I know that you, I was just telling my husband before we started recording how you are involved with Polyface Farms a lot. And that's actually how my husband and we have our own little farm as well. And our chicken tractors are very much like Joel Salatin's chicken tractors. They've evolved a little bit, but they're still very much just like his chicken tractors. And I know that you do events there as well. So hopefully someday people will get a chance to go see his farm and meet up with you and do one of your events.
I would love that so much. So my events are listed on my website, holistichilda.com, if people want to check and see what I'm doing. And yeah, mid-August, I'm going to go to a Polyface Patron Appreciation Day just for the heck of it. I mean, I do get some of Joel's food now and then, but I really just love mixing and mingling with people. Like I said, I think it's so good for our health. So yeah, I would love to meet folks in person and meet you in person and see your farm, for goodness sakes.
Well, it's not like a traditional farm, but we only have an acre and a half. But yeah, I think when people, and I had a girl on who we get our eggs from, and she's at a farm down the road as well. And so she gets her meat birds from us and we get our eggs from her. And she's got a whole farm that she does her own, grows all her produce and things like that. And so when I was talking with her about it, I totally lost my train of thought now there for a second.
Well, let me interject and it'll come back to you. I want to say, well-nourished people are the happiest people on the planet. Like, I feel like they're so satisfied that there's not a deficiency of something. So they're not like angry and reactive. This has been my experience, so that's why Joel, I mean, not only is he well nourished physically, spiritually as well, right? He's a Christian, but I just felt like he became my friend the minute I interviewed him. And this was years ago. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, you really are my friend. Like, we've just gotten to know each other better and better. And it's so beautiful. So if you want to meet like happy, healthy people, chances are you can meet them on a farm.
Yeah, I would 100% agree because, once I changed how I lived, my depression and anxiety and all that tension, internal stress and tension. Now everything's not perfect. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I am also suffering from traumatic brain injury too. So that's a whole nother rehabilitation project in itself. But yeah, once you remove some of those toxins from the food or an environment, well-nourished people are 100% happier and healthier and more peaceful. So I completely agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think Sally Fallon Morell, the president of the foundation, says that we have these endocannabinoid receptors in our brain. So we don't need something outside of us to make us high. Like, we're naturally high. And this is so true. Girl, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. I'm like, I don't need any of that stuff because I'm so happy. Like, it's amazing. And again, this is one of those test and see or taste and see, like, get into nourishing yourself more deeply, avoiding those packaged foods. Like I said, avoid what's fake, embrace what's real, and watch what happens. I used to give my kids a hard time. I love them so much, but they would ask me for so many after school snacks. I'd be like, okay, what do you want for your 7th snack? I would get a little snarky. I was like, why are they asking for so many snacks? It's because it was all carbs. I was giving them, like, let's just say apples and pretzels. And, I thought I was doing the good thing. I didn't realize, oh my gosh, there's no fat or protein. There's nothing. It's like I was throwing kindling on the fire instead of giving them logs that would burn longer. So through no fault of their own, they were like pestering me for more and more and more. And finally I'd be like, okay, the kitchen is closed. I was just doing the best I could with 4 under 5. But now I know, and I can't go back, but I can still do things today that are good for me. And now actually they come and they raid my freezer. They're like, what have you got, Mom? But I don't mind because it's all the good stuff and I want to share with them. So it's a beautiful thing.
Well, I'll definitely put a link to Joel Salatin in the show notes as well. So hopefully they can see his farm, and you said we'll have your links to your
yes
as well, so they can check out wherever you're going to be. At the end of every episode, I usually ask my guests for their don't miss this moment, and it's basically the one key takeaway that they would want the listener to remember from our conversation today. What would your don't miss this moment be for today's episode?
Wendy, I think it would literally be, don't miss this moment. This moment right here, right where you are, is something to be thankful for. It's not always easy, but it's beautiful. And as you cultivate gratitude, you can be thankful even when you feel like you're in a vice and it's really hard, because you are a survivor. You are going to make it through, or that God is holding your hand wherever you are on your journey. Like, there are ways to get through the toughest time. And part of it is being mindful and being thankful.
Oh, what a perfect way to end today. So why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about where they can find you and follow you?
Absolutely. So I've got my website, holistichilda.com. People can go there to find out more about the course I'm offering on the 6 Ancestral Secrets. Holistic Hilda on Instagram, and on TikTok, I do posts in Spanish, actually. And then, of course, I'm the host and producer of the Wise Traditions podcast. They can find that on any podcast platform, Wise Traditions.
Yeah, I love the Wise Traditions podcast. I work from home now, so both for my personal job and my day job. So I don't get to drive in the car. That was like my favorite time when I'd fill with podcasts. So I don't get to listen to podcasts the same way that I used to before. But yeah, I recently listened to your podcast episode about cholesterol, which was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you so much.
I highly encourage people to listen to that, because that's one of my biggest things that I think that people really don't understand as well. And we've gotten wrapped up into, which is with food in general or health in general, what the media says and what's on TV. And so, yeah, I think we just need to get back to basics.
100%.
Well, it was such a pleasure. And it was my honor to have you as a guest today, Holistic Hilda. And I hope to see you again sometime.
Me too, Wendy. Thanks so much for having me. It's been very, very fun.
BrainMD nutraceuticals are high-quality supplements specifically designed to support and enhance brain health. Developed by Dr. Daniel Amen and his team of experts, these supplements use carefully selected ingredients backed by scientific research to promote cognitive function, mood stability, and overall mental wellness. BrainMD's commitment to purity and efficacy assures that their supplements provide targeted nutrition for the optimal brain performance and long-term brain health. Be sure to click my link in the show notes. If you want to continue learning and hearing all things nutrition for your mind, body, and soul, click like, subscribe, or favorite me on whatever podcast platform you use, or you can find me at ForgivenNutritionist.com. This podcast was designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to achieve your health and wellness goals. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any illness or medical condition or take the place of any treatments from your current healthcare providers.